So one of the things that we've done also at the Digital Scholarship Lab is to digitize all those debates. 3,000 pages, okay? And I'm guessing people don't really want to read 3,000 pages, but they might want to actually see what people said. So, we've had just a few pages from those in the anthology. But, you might want to say, well, I believe that whoever this Ayers guy, it has exaggerated how much they talk about slavery, because they talk about slavery in both of these things. How much did they actually talk about that? So you can go to this and you type in slave and then asterisk, because that allows you to search for anything that has the word slave in it. And you search it, and it goes down to Richmond, and it comes back, and it's going to do this, thank goodness. And it maps where people talked about it, so you can see, well, they're talking about slavery in what becomes West Virginia, but they're talking about all across the whole rest of the state. And you can see they only mention it 1,432 times, once every 2 pages that they talk about it. And you can scroll down, you can see all the times that they talk about it, and you can see down there at the bottom. Imagine you were shopping, how many shoes you'd have to look at or whatever. But you can also say, well, how does this change over time? Did they talk about slavery more as the moment of decision came? And if we put this down here with the elections that they had, how did their ideas talk about seceding or not? So this is in the spirit of the anthology. Here, see for yourself. Well, what did they talk about? And if you went back there, I read a little article from the New York Times about this on their online blog. You search for rights. It's mentioned 732 times. Okay? So rights and slavery are entirely integrated. So the debate that we keep having, no, it wasn't slavery, it was states' rights. No, it wasn't states' rights, it was slavery, misses the point. They're defending their right to determine their own future as a slave society using the only thing they have, which is the language of federalism. And so we basically just misspecified the problem for 150 years, acting as if it were slavery, they would say, because this is my property and I want to protect it. Well, that's actually what they quoted out of the Alexander Stephens speech. So then, on April 22nd, so they vote for Union in early April, then Fort Sumter, and they won't even secede after the firing on Fort Sumter, which the South Carolinians do precisely to force Virginia to act. Because they assume Virginia acts, and it's Tennessee and North Carolina, maybe Kentucky, maybe Maryland. And so Virginia is wrestling with all this. They can imagine that they're going to be the battleground. They say it. But they also say, maybe by joining the new Confederacy, we can stop the war. We'll be so big that the North won't dare go to war against it. So that's, people need to, the excerpt that Franny surprised me with, reading out of my own book, kind of freaks me out. You need to really insist on this, that a vote for secession, they don't necessarily think is a vote for war. They think if you're strong enough that the North will say, okay, you're not bluffing this time. You're talking about leaving, you mobilize something the size of continental Europe, maybe we'll compromise. Okay. So even as late as all these debates, we've got to forget how the war turned out, or that it even started, because every time people were wrong about what they thought was going to happen. So it is important, I think, if you're the scholar talking about this, and again, really, no, I'm kidding. First of all, we've given you the secession debates. It might be something you send the folks home to look at themselves, or it might be you have a computer in the room and you can just do a quick thing like this, and you can type in tariff. Was it really about economics? And you'll see it's mentioned 82 times compared to 1,400. And you'll say, no, that's not really true. That's something that people will insist on. That is just economics. It's just not true, right? Now, it's economic in the sense that slavery is the foundation for everything else, and slavery has an economic meaning. But it's not, that's just anything. So then, that's the context for that, and it's also the context for Alexander Stephens, who actually visits Virginia, but on April 22nd, after Virginia has seceded but not joined the Confederacy. That's another thing to remember. Okay, there's a time in between when Robert E. Lee is trying to decide what he's going to do. Is that after Virginia has left, but has not joined the Confederacy. People think maybe they'll create a new kind of Confederacy of border states, of Pennsylvania, and Illinois, and Ohio. What they see is the uninsane people between South Carolina and Boston. That's really the way they see it. That's what they think, that we will compromise, and they talk about this. Or there will be this 13th Amendment to the Constitution that will guarantee slavery forever on the Missouri Compromise line. They say that's all we need. We're out, then the conflict is over. So people think those things are going to happen. But Lee, one reason he's uncertain, because he's not sure what Virginia's going to do. And Virginia's not certain what it's going to do. But Alexander Stephens, they do print his speech from the Cornerstone speech in the secession debates. So it's not just like some speech that's just out there, people refer to it. And the surprising thing, you see the questions here, is it old-fashioned? He doesn't think that it's old-fashioned. He thinks that the old fuddy-duddies and the founding fathers just didn't understand science and just didn't understand the fundamental difference between the races. So it's a scary foreshadowing of what's going to come, is that enlightened knowledge about the reality just says that black people are inferior, and therefore we're the first nation to really acknowledge this new idea and honestly build on it. Okay? So that breaks the thing apart too. We're used to thinking of racism as old-fashioned. Well, here's a case where, in fact, they're saying that they're on the cutting edge of thought. So, now it's interesting too, I don't want to talk about it right now, but notice how everybody invokes the Founding Fathers, right? And maybe a good way to do that, to tie things together, I think you can kind of introduce things a little bit so people have some sense of what the different readings are about. But also, then maybe this would be a good place to pause and go back and see everybody from Frederick Douglass to Thoreau to Lincoln to the Virginia Seceders to Alexander Stephens are all invoking the Founding Fathers. And in surprising ways. Sometimes you think the people who are the inheritors of the American identity are attacking them, whereas the people who see themselves as creating a new nation see them fighting under the same ideals as the Founding Fathers. The symbol of the Confederacy is George Washington. Okay? So that's an important thing for people to remember as well. So the paragraph that Franny read is, you can forget things in a very short span and just to say, let's just look at this one particular document for what it is and what it says. Forget about looking ahead and what happened this week. Just look at what did they know. I don't know about you all, but I live my life not having the foggiest idea of what's going to happen in the next hour. Or what's happening 50 miles away. Even with the internet and all this. Imagine what life was like in the 19th century. And what people could actually see and know. That's what determined the decisions they made. Now, Robert E. Lee, this is the first time we're going to see historic scholarship. This book won a lot of prizes, but I think it's fair to say some people who are defenders of Lee are deeply skeptical of it. Even though, and you might say, why? Give people a chance to say whatever they want to say. I think that one strategy of good teaching is let people say what they think. Don't try to contain it. But of course, and Pryor is actually just suggesting that Douglas Southall Freeman's argument that Lee made the only decision that he could is just not true. And you might call people's attention, look up on Wikipedia, George Thomas, like 2/5 of all Southern-born officers who'd sworn allegiance to the United States Army and the United States government did not go with their states. George Thomas becomes a leading Union general, and his sisters back in Virginia turn his picture against the wall and never talk to him again. But it was not ordained that people would fight with their state or with their home. Thomas says, more important than my sentimental attachment to any place is the word I gave before God about where my loyalties lie. Okay? But I find this very sympathetic to Robert E. Lee. Okay? This is, and that new thing, pretty cool, that we got in under the wire because she found this new document, and you can see that she's willing to revise her own thoughts. So it's not like scholars coming here and saying, here's the truth, this is it. One reason I like Pryor's things, it has a tone of sympathy and uncertainty. And she even revises herself. which I think is a useful thing to do. She wrote that just for us. The Twain reading reminds us of something important, how ragged the border was. So even after secession, nobody has any idea where the lines are going to be. Okay, is Kentucky going to be a Confederate state? Is Maryland going to be a Confederate state? Is Missouri going to be a Confederate state? Nobody knows for a long time. What are you supposed to do? And so Twain, because he's Twain and self-deprecating and making stuff up, is very interesting. But it's useful to that as well to remember that so often the past looks like everybody was serious and single-minded. Yeah, they were just people too, and they goofed around, and they made stupid mistakes, and they did things like ran around and ate all the chickens off the farms. And but why would he imagine in 1881 that he'd actually shot somebody? When the editor here says that there's no indication that did. Was he a coward to run to Nevada and California? You have a responsibility to stay and fight, even if it's not clear. We're cutting slack because he ends up becoming Mark Twain, bless his heart. Right? But what if that was somebody else who didn't end up being Mark Twain, who just said, this is too hard. I'm going to go be a journalist or mine for gold, or I'm bailing. What would we think of somebody like that? And why?